Hello and welcome. This is the orientation webinar for the Learning Collaborative on Workforce Recruitment and Retention in Behavioral Health. The collaborative is sponsored by the Central East Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, which is funded by the federal government. I will be managing the collaborative and providing technical assistance to you over the course of this experience, along with my colleague, Dr. Manny Paris. The focus of the collaborative is fourfold. We will be tending to the ongoing recruitment and retention challenges that your organization faces. We will spend some time looking at COVID-related recruitment and retention challenges. And across all of our work, we'll be using a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens to focus on those important priorities as we look at recruitment and retention. And last but not least, there'll be an emphasis on sustaining an ongoing focus in your organizations after the collaborative ends. In terms of the process of the collaborative, in your application, your organization's identified a 3-person team. And the first step will be to convene that team and to prepare to participate in the initial meetings of the collaborative. The initial meetings involve 3 half-day education and work sessions, and that's followed by a process in which you develop a recruitment and retention plan and implement that plan. Along the way, I'll be providing a briefing on this process to the CEOs of the participating agencies. Manny and I will be providing ongoing technical assistance to you and your team about the development of your plan and its implementation. We'll also convene 3 additional times with all agencies. During those meetings, agencies will share the goals that they've established for their recruitment and retention plans, talk about the progress they're making, and discuss any obstacles that they are encountering. And along the way, we'll ask you to update your plans and submit some very brief reports to us and a final report about your efforts. In terms of the content of what we'll be covering, the education that you'll receive will focus on how to identify specific recruitment and retention challenges and goals. We'll provide a wealth of information about best practices in recruitment and retention, and talk about some of the COVID-related challenges and strategies. We'll provide information on how to measure recruitment and retention. We'll give you a template for building your recruitment and retention plan, and we'll provide a great deal of information also about strategies related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have information on how to manage the change process in your organization, and also, again, information on how to sustain your plans and the changes that you put in place over the course of this collaborative. We'll give you feedback on your plans in addition to sort of the ongoing technical assistance around their implementation. And part of the collaborative that organizations tend to really value is the peer learning aspect. You'll learn what your other peers are doing. You'll get some ideas from them. You'll share your ideas. And the general discussions amongst your peer organizations is something that you're likely to find quite valuable. In terms of timelines for this process, notifications of acceptance are released on September 21st, and that really begins the preparation period. You're asked to review this webinar, and the slides from this webinar are also available on our website. The launch sessions, the half-day launch sessions, are already scheduled. They were in the request for applications, and those are on October 12th, 19th, and 26th. All 3 members of your team are expected to participate for the 3 hours on each of those days. So please note those times and dates if you have not already. Put them in your calendar. You'll receive Zoom invitations for those meetings. The CEO briefing will be on November 30th, and I'll reach out to the CEOs to remind them of that date and time. Our 3 virtual all-team meetings, which occur later in the process, will happen on February 1st, March 29th, and June 7th from 10 to 11:30 in the morning. And the collaborative will conclude in late June. So what do you do to prepare for the launch sessions? The time is now to sort of begin gathering relevant information on recruitment and retention in your agency, to start collecting information about what your challenges and priorities are, to look at what recruitment and retention data you have, to think about what you've tried and how it worked, any ideas you've been pondering of the things you might do next, and how you might overcome some of the many obstacles to being more successful in recruiting and retaining your workforce. You can find this information by talking to your leaders and your staff. I'm sure much of this information is held in the institutional sort of memory, and you may have other working documents on recruitment and retention that would be useful to you in this process. We ask that you convene your 3-person team at least twice before the launch sessions begin, and meet at least once with your senior leader, your CEO, or a senior leadership group to talk about some of these issues. We'd like you to examine and report on some of your data before the first meeting starts. Your HR data systems may collect and store much of the information that would be of use to you. You should be thinking about what workforce variables you actually measure in your organization. You might have information on recruitment, things such as the application volume, data on offers and acceptance rates, information about retention, such as turnover and vacancy rates. You may have information on the characteristics of your workforce, particularly how long they stay and work with you on average, or work at your organization. And some organizations also collect information on staff attitudes, either through satisfaction surveys, engagement surveys, or exit interviews. As you look at what data you have, an important question to ask is, do you analyze it in any way? In other words, do you collect it and look at it just for your organization as a whole, or do you break the information down by type of worker, by program or supervisor? Some of you may have a lot of data, some of you may have little data, and we recognize that variability. But part of the collaborative process is to ask you to start looking at what you have, and for us to help you think about how you can better use data as part of your recruitment or retention tracking and interventions. So we have a priorities and data form. It's just a little over a page that we would like you to complete and submit prior to the first launch meeting. You can download this form at this web address, AnnapolisCoalition.org/CE. The CE stands for Central East, the supporter of this collaborative. The form asks you to list 3 recruitment and retention priorities that you think your organization has. These won't be your final priorities, but we want you to spend some time thinking about and identifying possible areas in which you might want to focus. And then we ask you to complete a data sample. So there are very specific questions on the form, and asks you to provide basic information about the number of employees you have and other information related to turnover rates and vacancy rates. It should be very self-explanatory, but if you have any questions whatsoever as you work with the form, send me an email at michael.hoge@yale.edu. We're asking that these data forms be submitted by all organizations, 1 form per organization. And you can email that to me by October 7th, which is the end of the week prior to our launch sessions starting. And we'll be using that data and talking about it during the launch sessions. We will not share and identify data from specific organizations, but we'll look at averages and aggregate the data and use it just to talk about what's happening amongst the participating organizations as a group. So here are the instructions for the launch sessions. Team members do not need to be in the same building. And in fact, we ask that each team member be in different rooms in front of their own computers with their own webcams for participating in our sessions. We found that when teams gather in a room and try to use one camera, that it is difficult for them sometimes to hear what's happening in the meeting. And it is extremely difficult for us to hear what individual members are saying. Have the information that you've collected about what's going on in your organization around recruitment and retention, and things you've tried and ideas you have that information available. We will send you some documents to download prior to the sessions, and we ask that you do that so you have those available. And at least one member of the team should be ready, to take notes for the team with their computer. The other thing that we would like you to do is reminisce a little bit, individually and collectively amongst your team. Sort of think about these two questions. How did you get a particular position? In other words, what is your personal recruitment story? And then what kept you in a particular position? What is your personal retention story? This could be about any professional job that you've had over the course of your career, but ponder these questions. And then we'd like each team to designate one person to share a personal recruitment or a retention story during the first launch session. We'll use this discussion to sort of kick off and dive in a little bit to the notion of what stands out for people about how they find and why they keep particular jobs. So here's a recap. We want you to meet with your team, begin assembling your recruitment and retention information. In that process, meet at least once with your senior leader or senior leaders. Complete and submit the priorities and data form to me by October 7th. Meet at least twice to finalize your preparation for participation. And then reminisce about the jobs you've had and pick one of your team members who'll be ready to tell either a recruitment or a retention personal story at our first meeting. Most importantly, have the entire team attend all launch sessions. So that's it. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And Manny and I very much look forward to working with you. Take care.